Hey tribe, how are you? I hope that the connection is okay for us for the duration of this video this morning. I wanted to thank you all so much for engaging with the last few shares. Some of you just sending like a shout out regarding coming off of social media. And I'm honestly really pleased and feeling a lot more peaceful and gentle, and actually feel more deeply able to really drop into self-love, self-care, and presence with the work that I'm here to do versus the work that I had suddenly realized I was chasing. And that's so much actually why today's share is about our divine spark, and as a beautiful reminder that we're the goal, we ourselves are the reward, that there's nothing to actually get out there. That's an illusion of our own creation and a collective agreement about the reality that we live in. And really, the more we yoke the divine spark within us, the more life becomes divine and miraculous, and then that really does permission us in the momentum that we're going in, as far as much more feel good vibes, centeredness vibes, like basically just kind of knowing who you are, but not in any kind of fixed or attached way. So it's the knowing from within self. Um, so this is, I suppose, very relevant. You know that we have our tools and our practices and our daily meditations and our creative expressions, right? And that the creative expression really is almost, you could say, one and the same as the divine spark. And yet the divine spark is the connection, right? To me, it's the connection point. It's that source point. And I know in my own practice, sometimes Amanda mentioned having a meditation where it was super beautiful and there was like all of this light that came through. And I love those meditations, right? Especially especially when they're coming out of, or off the back of maybe some anxiety or a trigger, or a storm is coming through and we're having to like sit there, and these emotional waves are coming up and over us, and then eventually we just settle, and then we drop into this divine space, right? And that divinity from within us is ultimately what soothes us after the storm. That divine spark is really what is inside of us that helps us forgive ourselves for all the shit, basically, or forgive ourselves for all of the darkness and the suffering and the polarity, when we're ready to rise into greater unity from within ourselves. Which simply means, how I would look at it or interpret it, is that it really, as beings, just means living in more authenticity, living in greater integrity of the self that you know you are, and the being that you know you are, and thus the creations you're desiring to create. And then that's when it really does bridge us into this space of greater non-judgment, because there is nothing to judge, right? Because we've absolved ourselves of the judgment of self, which basically means we're not out there judging other people, because we're not in self-judgment, right? And I mean, you can always say there's like the positive and the negative judgment, but we do need to be able to perceive, right? And so there's an aspect of our perception, of course, which is limited in a limited finite reality. And we could maybe debate or talk about, oh well, even the fact that we're perceiving, there's inherent in it judgment. But here in the Fearless Life Tribe, we're specifically talking about judgment that blocks our bliss. So judgment that contracts us, stresses us, makes us jealous, makes us resentful. This person, that person, I'm horrible. Blah. And it's the thought form judgment that basically like blocks our heart, and paints a picture of divisiveness, right? Of fear, of us against them, blame and attack. And when we can shift our thought process and look at the energy of judgment, often what we experience again are those layers that peel back, and then eventually there's compassion. So we recognize that our judgment that provoked us into irritability or anger was actually not justified. That was a that when we rooted it out, we realized that, oh my gosh, that was some weird limiting belief that I remember learning in high school, or something. Oh my god, I just heard that, and my mom used to say that over and over again. And this is something with awareness as well, that there is no linearity in our awareness. There's no goal. There's no um checkpoint, although of course we would have it be so, because our world is hierarchical, right? We have processes, and we have graduations, we have sort of things to work up to and achieve. And so from that world concept, of course, anything we do, it would appear that we want there to be a hierarchy, we want there to be a process, we want teachers and beings of this type to look like this and to be doing this kind of stuff, because that's how we've modeled that field or that industry. So we'd say like, oh, spiritual industries have people wearing robes, walking around, doing uniform activities. We have, education, where there's the kids in a certain demographic and they're all looking like this or looking like that. And then you have the philosophy students looking this way, and you have the math students looking this way. So we have segregated ourselves through a hierarchical structure of the world, right? And all of it is as it is because it is. And yet, our choosing, our conscious choosing in our evolutionary state of being is that, do I enjoy it? Is this serving me? And this is part of me being the person that I am. Is I did that. I went to ashrams in India and I studied with the gurus, and I sat and I meditated for hours at a time, and in Vipassana, in Ashtanga, in Shivananda, and Kundalini. It's like trying all these different sects, as it were, trying all these different, or you could just say, points of attraction when it came to founding an organization, right? And they're just rules, and the rules varied from school to school. And then another thing I'm aware of, with there's twofold. One is spiritual sovereignty. So this is part of why we do this work, is that we can rise above a lot of the chains in our mind that would appear to hold us down, which is why a lot of spirituality entrepreneurs or pioneers, how they were able to do all of it. Because it's not like the Shivananda necessarily had loads and loads, but he managed to set up centers all around the world. That's through the power of intent, right? And the intent is what led him into being able to feed the hungry and build ashrams and create a safe haven for people, earnest seekers, right? So our spiritual sovereignty really does elevate us beyond, in a sense, the political and economic world, because we no longer attach our identity, nor our power to that, right? So we kind of rise out of it. Again, yoking yoga, yoking your divine spark is bringing that energy structure forward, and then manifesting it in our reality. So we're looking at manifesting the divine from within ourselves. And again, how that looks for everybody is completely different. I gotta say, guys, even my increasing detachment at my own life is really kind of bizarre, and at the same time awesome. I've now settled into this sort of dropping back into this sort of behind the scenes. Now, tribes, you guys are different. You're still gonna see my face most days, because this, for me, this platform, you guys, like, this is a big part of the shift in my own reality, in my ability to talk very honestly and openly, and have other beings, other aspects of myself reflect back that same knowing. Because again, if it was just me in my head, which it has been for like 15 years, it wouldn't have the same sense of reality or validity if other people didn't also resonate with what's written in the Fearless Life Guide. And I know there's a line right at the beginning of just like, I just know this is going to resonate with some people. And it's not going to resonate with everybody. Not all beings or creatures are here to transform and process a bunch of emotionality. They're not here to process wounds and patterns of ancestry. They might be here to create new inventions. They might be here to um, break down systems. They might be here to evolve their bodies, and yet all of us are here for lots of different reasons. We're here as radiant vessels of transformation. We're here as the pioneers of regenerative physical vessels so that we don't age, certainly not in the same way that the old paradigm does. Divine spark. And I gotta say, it's just one of those things, like once you kind of, like, I want to say lock in, but it doesn't, it's not like rigid like that, but once you lock in to your divine spark, it's like you just don't want to go back. And that's the simultaneity of these last few years for me, is that last couple of years were the biggest leaps I've taken in my adult life. And yet, because of leaps I didn't take in my past, it was like the usher was like, this is it. If you don't take this leap, you're not gonna break through that veil, right? And then weirdly, it's been the most high vibing, awesome times of my life, and at the same time, the deepest, darkest, most painful, emotionally speaking. So having to face my self denial, having to face self deception, having to face distortion, perversion. Oh, guys, like the amount for me personally, like the amount of programming and energetic veiling that I've had to look at and perceive around romance, love, relationship, my projection of men, and then the collective projection of men, blah, 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 looking through all this stuff. And like literally getting to this last eclipse season, almost too exhausted to be triggered, like almost too energetically like done for any potential money thing to trigger me or body thing to trigger me. It's just be like, and then sleep. And that's something randomly, I just want to remind you guys that sleep, shavasana, is the best way to integrate transformation. So if we're getting like bowled over by energies and we're feeling really lethargic, please sleep. And let us not judge ourselves if we're sleeping lots and lots. Like I said to some of you, there was a couple of days last week, Monday, Tuesday, where I just slept, like literally. And then you get to that point, there's this part of your rational mind, if you are sleeping a lot more than normal, where you're like, will I ever have energy again? Will I ever be motivated to be creative again? Yes, you will. And actually, the more you drop back and the more you luxuriate and the more you just don't resist it. If you're tired, sleep. Think of a baby. Think of a baby or a very young child. They don't resist the ebb and flow of their energy. Like they might have something and then cry and then right? We're just here feeling and presence, and it's only the backlog. It's only our karmic backlog. It's only our buildup of repressed, denied desire that spins it out into these kind of distorted desires, right? So it's only really as we kind of step up, be like, this is me, this is who I want to be, and screw all the haters and all that kind of stuff. But we know in the Fearless Life Guide, it's like not screw the haters. It's like, oh, I love you as part of myself, but I want to do it over here like this now. It's like that's part of honoring as well, like talking over past stuff, and like even bringing up past stuff, I can feel the discomfort in my energy field. I can feel that like that's over now, that's done, and I can't go back, and I don't want to go back, and I'm, and it's okay, and it's safe, and it's yeah, just safe, healthy, well, wonderful to move in this next direction, right? And yet, reflecting back to you guys straight up, it's a process. Again, hierarchy, structure. We tend to like process. It helps us function. I would say it helps us make sense of who we are in this reality. And for some people, it's not necessary. We all have different ways of working it out, and it looks different for everybody, which is why competition comparison is totally futile, except maybe for just analytical observation, like as in deductionary stuff, like looking at for your own reasoning. But again, this is discernment of knowing the difference between a competitive comparison edge from self-denial, divide and conquer, and duality basically, versus a comparative, holistic study, right? Which is us trying to draw more useful information from information. And that's all we can do in this infinite rabbit hole of life, is just keep deducing and keep coming back to our center point, which is why we got to meditate, my friends.